Hey guys, Phil from Trail Talk here, and today we're going to be going over my top 5 best value trail ready budget full suspension bikes for 2021, as well as 5 worthy mentions. So with my buyer's guides, I'm not here to waste any of your time if you're scrolling by, so the time for the first bike, that starts up here, and the timestamps for all the bikes are in the description as well. But if you want to stick around, I'll go over the criteria for what I look for when I'm looking at these budget full suspension bikes, as well as the budget that we're going to really talk about, because budget, as always, is a very subjective term. Also, if you're looking for some more budget level hardtails, as well as some trail ready hardtails as well, I'll leave the links to my buyer's guides for those in the description as well. Also, if you could smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, as well as subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated as well. So you're looking to get your first dual suspension bike, or you're upgrading your old one after many years of abuse, it's safe to assume that you've put aside a lot of hard-earned money for your new bike. Because let's face it, these things aren't cheap. And if you're buying a new bike, you want something that's bang up to date with all the standards, as well as all the current geometry trends. Because 1, you want to keep it for a while. 2, you want it to last. 3, you want a capable platform to upgrade on. And 4, you just want a capable bike that can grow with you. So this means we want the bike to do a few different things. And as always, I've got my list here. So we want a wide range 1x drivetrain. We also want a dropper post, which is going to help you get your weight back in the descents. It's a lot safer as well. We want an air fork and shock to be able to really dial in the spring rate for your weight. We want hydraulic disc brakes to be able to stop you in all weather conditions. We also want a tapered head tube, which is not only just stiffer, it also allows us to upgrade to better forks in the future, or these bikes, they'll also come with a pretty decent fork from factory. We also want a boost frame with through axles. This is going to make things a lot stiffer and a lot more durable as well. And also, if you want to upgrade your wheel set in the future, it's a lot easier this way too. And then lastly, we want some modern geo as well. So we want a nice roomy reach, decently slack head angle, and steep seat angle as well. But overall, we want things to be nice and balanced because this is a trail bike, so we want it to do everything well. When it comes to the amount of travel, the good thing is that most brands' more budget-oriented dual suspension bikes are in that trail category. So we're talking around about 115 to 130 millimeters of travel. If you're looking at it focusing on your descents a little bit more, I'll have my more all-mountain buyer's guide coming out soon. So that's going to be for your 130 to 150 millimeter travel bikes. So definitely stick around for that one coming soon. So these shorter travel trail bikes, they're designed for more XC riding as well as trail riding. So they aren't designed for super chunky fast terrain as well as huge drops over 2 meters and that kind of stuff like that. You're better suited to a more descending oriented bike if you're going to be doing that stuff, and it's going to be more durable in the long term. So what these bikes are designed for, as I said, for XC and trail riding, so more flowier trails, some technical stuff as well, but nothing crazy, smaller jumps and drops, and just generally undulating terrain. So a lot of ups and downs is what these bikes are designed for. But overall, if you just want to have fun on the trail, this is what these bikes are designed for as well. So what does all that mean in clear terms? It's pretty much just a mountain bike. It balances descending and climbing very well. And as I said, if you're going to be focusing more on those black level descents with chunkier terrain, bigger features, I definitely recommend spending a little bit extra and getting a bit more travel because it's going to serve you a lot better in the long run. So let's talk about price. And before we go into it, you can spend a little bit less, but typically the frames aren't going to be as good as well as the geometry of the bike. And you're going to typically get QR release front forks as well as rear axles as well as coil forks as well. So we're not going to be really getting all those things that I kind of talked about in our criteria earlier. And typically with a lot of these cheaper dual suspension bikes, you're just not going to have a great experience. You're going to be upgrading everything all the time. It's going to break, all that kind of stuff like that. You just want to get out on the trails. So it's worth spending a little bit extra to get a reliable package. So my kind of price range for a budget bike that you're going to be getting all those things that I talked about earlier, it's going to be around about $1,500 to $2,000 US, which that kind of converts to around 2,000 to 2,750 Australian dollars. And then 1,200 British pounds to 1,600 British pounds. So that's kind of the budget that I kind of like to shoot around. And with a lot of these bikes I'm going to talk about, it's definitely worth sometimes going up to the next level up because you get a great fork that you won't really need to upgrade in the future. So that's definitely worth factoring into your budget. So I'm going to be going over 5 different bikes as well as 5 worthy options. And there's going to be options from all around the world. So no matter where you are in the world, there should be an option for you. And as always, links to all the bikes in the description as well as timestamps if you want to have a look there. But without further ado, let's get into the first bike. So the first bike on the list is one I reviewed last year, which is the Polygon Siskiu D7, which has seen some spec changes for this year that make it even better. If you want some details on how the bike rides, I'll put the link to that review in the description. Moving on, this bike's zippy and fun and really strikes a good balance between descending and climbing. To me, it's what a trail bike should really be like. Luckily, it's pretty cheap too, coming in at $1,699 US and 2,399 Australian dollars. There's also the D6 that shares the same frame for a little cheaper too. Starting with the Geo, you get a steep 76-degree seat angle, which really helps on the climbs, a nice balanced 67-degree head angle, and a decent reach on the size large of 465mm. It does have wheel-specific sizing, so that's something to note too. So small and medium frames come in 27.5-inch wheels, and then medium to extra large come in 29. As I said, the spec's great for the money. The 2021 model sees an upgrade to the rear shock to the RockShox Deluxe Select Plus, which was a popular aftermarket upgrade for many, and it really makes the rear suspension on the bike shine. This is paired with the RockShox Recon up front like last year, matching the travel in the rear at 120mm. Then you get a wider range drivetrain in the 11-speed Shimano M5100 Dior drivetrain, and that has a cassette that has 11 to 51 tooth range, which is definitely great to see, a bit more range than last year. You also get a tubeless ready rims and tyres, so they've got the Schwalbe knobby nicks, and then a great cockpit too with some wide entity bars and a short stem too. The only real upgrade I'd make is to the Shimano MT201 brakes. They definitely lack a little bit of bite, but at this price point, I'm really nitpicking. This bike really does have it all, and is a top contender for the best value along with our next bike. And as always, if you want to get the bike, I have an affiliate link for Bicycles Online who exclusively sell Polygon in Australia and the US. So if this buyer's guide helped you out, it would be awesome if you could buy through that link, as it's a great way to support the channel. So next up, we have the Vitus Mythique VR coming in at a ridiculous $1,499 US dollars, 1,249 British pounds, and 2,299 Australian dollars. Before we jump in too far with the VR, there are two other models in the lineup above the VR, in the VRS and VRX. Personally, the VRX at 1,999 US dollars is my pick. Crazy to see the Marzocchi Z2 at this price, but let's stick to the VR as you get the same great frame and everything we need at a more budget price. So starting off, what I do like about the bike is that you can get it in both 27.5 and 29 inch in the full size ranges, which is great to see. Personally, for this style of bike, I prefer the 29er, but the 27.5 would make a great play bike. So if you just want to have fun, the 27.5 might be for you. Digging into the geo of the 29er in the size large, you get a 468mm reach, 76 degree seat angle, and roughly a 66.5 degree head angle. Something to note too is the chainstays are on the longer side at 445mm as well. All round, this is really good at this price point. Onto the travel, and the VR has 130mm front and rear, while the VRS and VRX models have 140mm of travel. Looking at the spec, you get X-Fusion suspension front and rear, which do the job well, but personally I prefer the RockShox setup on the Polygon, especially for the rear shock. But the rest of the spec is dialed. You get wide WTB tubeless ready rims with a solid tyre spec too, which is rare at this price point. So you get a soft Magic Mary up front, which is going to give you loads of grip, and a hand damp in the rear, both in a decent casing, which is tubeless too. You also get a reliable drivetrain, which is a mix of 1x10 Shimano Dior with a Sunrace cassette with an 11 to 46 tooth range. You also get the ever reliable Brand X dropper with a solid 150mm of drop on the large and extra large sizes. Onto the brakes, and you get some decent brakes here. So the Shimano MT401s, which are a rare sight at this price point. You definitely see those MT201s. To round it all off, you get a mix of nuke-proof and Vitus finishing kit with wide bars that are size specific, which is good to see too, and a short 50mm stem. Overall, this bike's absolutely killer value and probably one of the best value dual suspension bikes on the market, but if you can afford the VRX, it's even better value. Next up, we have one for people who prefer some cleaner lines and who prefer to cover more miles as opposed to shredding the trails. And that's the Canyon Neuron AL6, coming in at 1,899 US dollars, 2,949 Australian dollars, and 1,849 British pounds. To me, this bike looks a lot more premium compared to some of the options at this price. That's entirely subjective, but the bike just looks good. Looking at the geo, it's one of the more conservative options on the list, so you get a 67.5 degree head angle, slacker 74.5 degree seat tube, and a reach of 453mm on the size large, and the seat tube is slightly on the longer side too. So it's tailored to more of the XC and all-day riding end of the spectrum of trail bikes. It features 130mm of travel front and rear, and small and extra small sizes come in 27.5-inch wheels, and medium up comes with 29-inch wheels. The spec isn't quite as competitive as the Vitus and Polygon, but still very good at the price, and you get everything in our list I mentioned at the start of the video. Starting off with the suspension, you get a great rear shock in the RockShox Deluxe Select Plus, and the RockShox GD up front is okay, but it's a bit more flexy than the Recon on the Polygon, thanks to the 30mm stanchions compared to the 32 on the Recon. It's good to see a 12-speed Shimano Dior drivetrain too, and you even get the XT rear derailleur, which is pretty cool, even though I'd prefer that money to be spent on a better fork. You also get tubeless ready rims, and the new Schwalbe Nobby Nick tyres, which do the job well, but definitely aren't the grippiest up front. They're good for trail riding if you want something fast, but if you want something a bit grippier, I'd save the other tyre for a spare for the rear. Other than that, you get Canyon's dropper post as well as Canyon finishing kit, and the not so powerful Shimano MT201 brakes. So overall, I think this bike is a great platform for someone who likes to cover a lot of miles, with a bit more forgiveness, and someone who likes slightly more conservative bike that definitely values a clean finish. Moving on to another brand that is featured on the last two buyers guides this year, and that's the Marin Rift Zone 29.2, coming in at 2,799 Australian dollars, 2,049 US dollars, and 1,849 British pounds. So slightly on the more expensive side, but if you want to go fast, this is the bike for you. There is also the Rift Zone 27.5, which used to be known as the Hawkhill, which uses geometry that hasn't been updated as recently as the 29 version, but it makes for a great play bike, so if you want something fun and throwable, the Rift Zone 27.5 is the one for you. But back to the 29er, this bike is the most tailored towards descending out of all the bikes on the list, and it makes it quite capable on the high speed stuff, and that's definitely reflected in the geometry of the bike. So you get a slack 65.5 degree head angle, steep 76 degree seat angle, and nice long 480mm reach on the size large. It also has super short chainstays at 425mm, which keeps this bike very fun on what is a slightly longer bike. In terms of travel, it's 125mm in the rear and 130 up front. Moving on to the spec, it's very similar to the Polygon with the Recon up front and RockShox Deluxe in the rear, but this time it has no lockout, and then the Shimano MT201 brakes. You also get the Shimano Dior drivetrain, except in this case, you get the 12-speed. Looking at the tyres, they are on the more aggressive side with the V-Flow Snap on Marin's 29mm internal width tubeless ready rims, which hook up really well, but might be a bit slow in the rear for some. Rounding it all off, you get a 150mm Trans-X dropper on the size large, and then Marin finishing kit, which I've really enjoyed on my old Alpine trail. So if you like going fast and pushing your trail bike, but you still want something that pedals pretty well, the Rift Zone's probably the bike for you. And as always, if you live in Australia and want to get a Marin, my Bicycles Online affiliate link is in the description. The last bike on the list has been a staple for the past 2 years, and that's the Norco Fluid FS, in particular the entry-level FS3, coming in at 1,799 US dollars and 2,399 Australian dollars. I actually reviewed the 2019 FS1, which uses the same frame as the current model, so I'll put the link in the description, as the geometry and trail manners of the bike will still be the same, and it gives some good insight on how the bike rides. I really did like the geo on the old bike for someone who wants something that works better on faster flowy trails. So you get a roomy 470mm reach on the size large, 66.5 degree head angle, and a steep 76 degree seat angle, as well as some short 429mm chainstays. The bike has 120mm of rear travel and then 130 up front. The 120mm in the rear doesn't feel like a whole lot of travel when you're out on the trail, so as I said, it definitely works better on more flowy, less technical terrain. The spec on the FS3 is pretty good too, but not the best compared to the Vitus and the Polygon for the money, but the frame provides a great platform to build on. Personally, I think the FS2 and FS1 are better value buys, but this is a budget buyer's guide, so we're going to stick with the FS3. So the fork and shock are the same X-Fusion setup as the Vitus, and you get a 12-speed SRAM SX drivetrain, which is a bit on the heavy side, but offers some decent range. You do get some good rims with the Stans Flow Ds, but the tires are from Goodyear and not tubeless, so swapping these out along with a Tektro HD M275 brakes would be my first upgrade, as this bike really likes to go fast and some good brakes and tires will really help that. Rounding it all off, you get a 150mm Trans-X dropper on the size large and wide 780mm bars as well as a 50mm stem. The Norco is a great platform to build on and definitely great for someone looking for a more descending oriented trail bike, especially on more flowier terrain. So there you go, there's my top 5 budget full suspension bikes for 2021, but wait, there's more, stick around, I've got my 5 worthy mentions coming up, and these bikes didn't quite make the list because another bike on the list might be very similar, but offers better value for money, or they might just be out of budget as well. So the first bike is definitely one that a lot of you will be asking for, and that's the Caliber Boss Nut and Triple B. These are amazing value bikes for those in the UK. The frame was actually made by Polygon, but the D7 has a few tweaks to the geo and room for a water bottle in the front triangle, so that's why the Caliber just missed out. Next up, we have the Merida 120, which is amazing value for money in Australia, but is also decent value in the UK and Europe. This is such a fun, little efficient bike that's got some fantastic rear suspension that works really well on technical terrain. It's not the longest bike out there, but if you want a true balanced trail bike for more undulating terrain, especially in Australia, then I really like it. My personal pick would be the 600 level model, as it's great value for money and comes with the Marzocchi Z2, which at this price point is definitely a steal. And if I could extend my list, this bike would definitely be on it as well. Next up, we have one for the US, and that's the Fazari Abjo Peak and Wiki Peak. These are great bikes for the money as well, and with Fazari you can customize them to add a dropper post. They also have a comprehensive bike fit program as well as a 30-day test period, which is insane to see as well. So if you live in the US, you might as well give them a go, as it's risk-free. Next up, we have 2 bikes that are just out of budget from some big brands. The first is the Giant Trance 3 29er. When I think of a true trail bike, this is pretty damn close to perfect for me. And it's got some great spec for money with that Marzocchi Z2, 4-pot brakes and 1x12 drivetrain. Giant really nailed it here, and personally there's not really much extra I'd spend any money on. You also get a great suspension platform too with the Maestro as well. So if you have a little bit extra, I'd definitely check this one out, because as I said, there's not really anything that I'd upgrade on it. The last bike is the brand new for 2021 Specialized Stunt Jumper Alloy. This one quite isn't as competitive on the spec front as the Giant, but the Geo is bang up to date with all the trends for someone who really wants a great descending bike and who likes to ride a little bit harder. It's good to see you also get a stiff fork too with the RockShox 35 up front, even though the damping might not be quite as good as say the Marzocchi Z2 on the Giant. But this bike really looks like it's one for the pinners, so it's going to absolutely shred on faster terrain, both technical and flowy. So if you like to descend fast, I think this is a great short travel trail bike option. And I know I said I only include 5, but I know I always leave a few out for my Euro friends out there. So if you're in Europe and you're looking for some great value bikes, I'd also check out the Rose Ground Control. It looks like a great option too, as well as the Cube 120. And I know a few people can get that in Australia as well. So those are my 2 Euro spec options along with that Merida. So there you go. There's my buyer's guide for some more budget oriented full suspension bikes in more of the trail category for 2021. As always, you could go a little bit cheaper, but you're kind of missing out on a few of those things that I kind of talked about in my criteria earlier. And all around, if you spend a little bit extra, you're definitely going to have a better experience on the trails. And also, you might save a little bit later with upgrades. It's really awesome to see how far these bikes have come along, and I'm pretty jealous for people entering the sport right now. I wish there were bikes like this when I started mountain biking. The spec that you get and the geometry of the bikes is miles ahead than what it used to be. So yeah, if you're entering the sport, there's no better time than now. And with most of these bikes, I'm talking about the most entry-level model in the lineup, so it can be worth spending a little bit more because you'll save a lot more in upgrades later. And lastly, I know a lot of you guys in my last buyer's guide said the bikes are too expensive and that kind of stuff like that, but this really is where I think the best value is at. And if you want to spend a little bit less, I definitely recommend going to a hardtail. So check out my budget-oriented hardtail as well as my trail-oriented hardtail buyer's guide as well. So these videos do take a little bit of time to research and put together, so if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well, that would be awesome. And leave a comment too. What bike's your favorite? Did I miss one? Definitely leave a comment and let me know. And as always guys, thanks for watching. See ya.